Welcome back to the Marketing Factor. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by Andrew Foxwell, who is the co-founder of Foxwell Digital and the guy behind the Foxwell Founders membership, where I've been a member for 5 years.
Long time.
Private
Since the beginning.
Since the beginning, man, for sure. I mean, Andrew spent the last decade helping brands, agencies, and operators get better at paid social through education, consulting, and a pretty relentless commitment to transparency in an industry that doesn't always reward it. You know, Andrew, I don't even know how I discovered Foxwell, but I should look back on it because I'm sure that's an indicator of how people find out about you. But I've been members of private Slack groups before, and this one is just one that I just stay super engaged with because it is so specific and so welcoming in terms of being able to share some of these kind of nuanced things that happen on platform. And really it was I don't know. I feel like the impetus for it was Meta, but now it kind of seems like all advertising. How'd you come up with the idea, man?
I was really lonely. There wasn't a place that I felt like I could come in and ask questions without being flamed. And there's a lot of the community lives on X and LinkedIn and stuff. But I thought, there's something to this where it's behind a paywall and it's gated and it's it's sort of curated the right way. And so I thought, what'll happen if we bring together some great people that I know? Now it's 550 members from 30 countries. And we just did our survey again, and we're about to release the results next week. $500 million a month we spend just on Meta, the group.
Wow.
Just Meta. I mean, it's insane. It's mental. And so, it's got serious firepower too. And Meta, also Google, TikTok, it kind of goes into all those. And we talk about that, as you said. So that's where I started it, and honestly, I just walked downstairs to talk to Gracie, who's my wife and business partner. And I was like, I'm going to try. I don't know. We'll see where this goes. But I do know that I love helping people. And so I think what's developed with this community, and you can check it out, foxwellfounders.com, is really, a place that you're taken care of. You can ask any question and it can become whatever you need it to be, right? It can be a support network. It can be a support net for you. It can be a place where you're talking and learning, meeting new people, learning new things. Or some people just use it as has this broken? I'm, want to go check on that, or
guilty.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good place to check on it. So, it's really in this EK guy place for me, where it's what I'm meant to do at this point in my life, taking care of people, taking care of members, connecting them, making sure they're taken care of. And I have an outsourced community management. I mean, we have a team that helps with stuff, but I'm still there every day and every hour. I'm taking care of folks, and I love that work, because I can see the real impact that we have. And what's better than that, knowing that I'm helping these people grow their businesses and in a real tactical, tangible way.
How many accounts do you actually work on ad accounts are you working on right now? Do you still stay pretty in that side of the business, or are you mainly working on the community side?
Yeah, we had an event, or had an agency for about 10 years. We've had our agency. So I've been running Facebook ads. If you look at the time I was at previous agencies, since they were invented, it's 15 years. So in December of 24, I outsourced the last of our accounts that we were hands-on running and said to my team, you guys can take these, whatever. And what I do now is a lot of auditing. We get, every member gets an audit every month. So I see inside, roughly 20 to 30 accounts a month that way. And then I have about 4 coaching contracts that I'm working on now, where I'm actually working with ad buyers or senior ad buyers, and we're looking at ad strategy and things like that. So we are not pulling levers anymore after the how many years, 16 years of doing it. I'm not hands-on levers. I'm strategically doing it. And it also was a community. It just was distracting for me. We're very aware of everything that's going on, and I'm talking to a ton of people and looking at the accounts that way. I mean, I still have a ton of accounts we're connected to, but we are more strategic advisors at this point. I am myself. My team is actually still ad buying quite a bit, because the way that I set it up is, they're all contractors. So they have their own businesses where they do their own things as well.
Cool. The biggest shift that I see in 2026, and it was happening last year and a little bit the year before that, was everyone's oh, creative matters in ads. Creative is really important. And that's really the only thing that Meta cares about now. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about Meta's push towards catalog first advertising and what that means for creative teams and thinking through the shift that comes back and forth between creative matters or just the algorithm that's learning? Like, explain that for those that don't live day to day in the platforms and don't get to see 25 different ad accounts each month.
Yeah, so I think what we have is a transition from what we all knew in Meta, which was Meta's really value proposition was micro targeting, and that's really what they did. You could go out and say, I want to find people that are obsessed with water bottles, and I'm going to target my water bottle ad to people that like water bottles. And Meta knows this based on a bunch of different signals. What we have a situation now is, and there was always micro campaigns, so you would have things set up that way, and it was hyper targeted, and that was what was successful. And that's what a lot of the education and a lot of us that came about in this world learned how to do. And that's really what made us a lot of money. So there's been a big shift, and some people have shifted sooner rather than, than other, or sooner or faster than others. And what the big shift now is like, yes, it's creative led targeting. You look typically at a campaign now, and it's all in a campaign budget optimization campaign, largely, which is, you're just letting it fly. Like if you have some new ads, you put them into one ad set in the CBO, and it's part of the spend, and Meta will determine that it'll put that in the right place. And if it's good, an ad that's brand new can compete against an ad that's a winner, and it can build up spend that way. What this, so this, I think that has been a big learning in the last couple of years. Yes, creative led targeting is big. Now what we've gotten into, I would think in 25, and let's talk about now thus far in 26, is like, it's very much around iterative targeting or iterative creative ideas and hooks and concepts and unlocking new personas, trying to find new sets of people that you are reaching out to, and the creative is doing that, and you're speaking to them in a different way. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. There's the AIDA framework. I mean, there's all these creative frameworks that you can utilize to go about this, and everybody does a little bit differently. But what the main piece on the menu is, like, they have to be different. And now in 26, what we've seen is that that's also tied to organic. So Meta's come out and said, under like their GEM protocols, which is essentially taking into consideration that organic is a bigger part of this. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff with GEM, but it's looking at the overall brand and saying, what's the story they're telling and who are they trying to get in front of? And so creative is what it's all about. And it's trying to find and trying to understand deeply what are the concerns that people have of buying your product. What are the objections you can bust? What are the ways that you could speak to them differently? And that's really where you have to live, which is why, a job that didn't exist 4 years ago, creative strategists, is now, a creative strategist that has direct response experience. I do recruiting as well. So I try to hire a lot of creative strategists, which is tough. I mean, a creative strategist that has direct response D2C e-com experience in the United States right now, like, they won't do anything for under $150,000. Like, they won't go, and it's like, because there's in such demand. So, and so that's kind of where it is. If you're not in it every day, it's like, it's a focus on an understanding of creative. And I think that you have to be constantly innovating in that department. And if you're not, you're going to be, you're going to be left behind, and you're going to see that the ads aren't scaling the way that you want to.
Well, if you think too, in terms of the ad creative, do ugly ads outperform like polished brand creative now? Because I think that that's like I hear that a lot. It's like the UGC of the world, or the people don't necessarily want to see polished brand creative because they're so used to seeing that now in their feed, and they may swipe through it. Do you think that there's like data to support that?
Ugly ads are a part of a mix that you want to try to put forth. And I think every brand is different. I think Barry Hott, who made this famous, I mean, this is like years ago that he had a hat. I remember he gave me a hat in Central Park 3 years ago that said "Make ugly ads," and like that was his thing. And he's like, this is what I'm going to be, building my empire on. And I think, to Barry's point, everybody was really trying to make creative that was really polished, and it doesn't need to be necessarily. And I think it doesn't mean that you're never going to do polished ads, because there are absolutely instances where you're wanting a high value, high dollar, like high production ad, and that can play a part in your marketing. So I think it's both. I mean, I think it's sort of all of those things that you want to make sure that you're thinking about. Something, you want to have, if you're running ads, you want to have an ad suite that has, you know, a a founder talking about it on their iPhone to a very polished, here's what it is, here's what it looks like. And you want to be probably 10 to 15% on AI creative as
Mm.
well, and experimenting there and seeing what kind of things you can put forth. I mean, there's a tool that a member just showed me that he's built that basically scrapes all of the ad comments and Reddit and all these other things from your website and takes the objections and angles and things that people are talking about with your product and then puts them into AI generated ads automatically.
Hmm.
And so, like, that's a great option, right? That's something that you want to be thinking about. And it's not going to be everything, but it's certainly going to be a part of the game. And you've got to be aware of that. And I think be testing that for sure.
How do you think about new customers and acquiring them genuinely when the algorithm keeps kind of optimizing towards existing buyers?
Yeah. So, one of the things that happens is they have a creative that works and they double down on that creative style that has worked. It makes sense, right? You follow the path that has led you to success. What you need to be doing, though, is that and creating and unlocking new segments of your customer base that you maybe didn't know about before. And if the customer base is, let's say that you feel like I've tried that, it doesn't really work, then you need to be innovative in talking about other angles within that to sell the product again, to get it repeat purchased, or to have innovation within your product product selection or product catalog to sell them more. I think that Meta will serve an ad that it knows and find a lane, and it'll continue to do that on a certain style. And people say, yeah, it's going to so many customers that we've already hit, etc. And the way to unlock that is to create a completely different style, throw things at the wall, and try to understand, okay, well, this is a different piece. And we can talk about it. We've talked about it a lot on the Scalability School podcast, which I'm a host of with Zach Stuck, about his brand Hollow. Okay. He's, alpaca wool socks, right? Like he what they're doing is there's like general pieces that they're putting forth that are general ads that are talking about offer, that are talking about bundling. So that's like some of what they have. And that stuff seems to hit mid to low funnel. And then there's all this content that they build around different segments like hunters, mountain bikers, nurses, construction workers. And that they keep doing this and trying to unlock, like, who else is using this? Who else do we know? And looking at post-purchase surveys and stuff like this. And they're creating new content that speaks to that particular audience. And they're going in the same CBOs. Like, they're not necessarily separated, but Meta knows to serve it that way. And that has continued to help their new customer percentage. So I think new customer percentages, it's one of those things that it completely understand that you're like, why does Meta keep spending on the same people? But it also, you have to look at and reflect upon how much have I put into the creative diversity and how much have I tried to find new sets of people or tried new ads that really look totally different, speaking to a new segment of the customer base. And that's how you're going to start to unlock new folks.
If you're scaling a brand new ad account with zero historical data, and let's say they have $5,000 to $10,000 a month to spend, where do you recommend that someone like that starts?
So if they're coming from zero, I think what we do is you try to look at, if there's never been any ads run before ever, then I think what you're trying to look at is what's the customer feedback that we've had thus far? And what do we know is the attractive value propositions of this? And so you create a segment of ads that are, let's say, 5 distinct styles. One of them is like a founder led talking about why they did this. And then the other 4 are, pitches on different value propositions or issues that you're solving of the customer. Many times founders and agencies as well don't say this enough because they're scared. They just are too general in what they're doing, and they just take what the brand owner says, like, well, these are great. And it's like, they're not actually saying what sets it apart. So I think if you really look at that, like, what's different about this? What problem is this going to solve? And you think through that lens, that's important. I think you then take those ads and you make sure that, your pixel set up properly, and, you make sure that your event, you have all that stuff with Meta properly done. And then you put it all in a CBO in one ad set, and you just give it a daily budget, and then you see what happens over a certain amount of time. I would probably do 7-day click, 1-day view to start and see what you get in terms of traffic. I think in an ideal world, you're also monitoring your traffic to see and watching sessions to see what people are doing. And I think, over time, then you start to look at what seems to get the engagement, and then you're taking that and then you're iterating on those concepts and continuing to push the boundary on that, on what, who you're speaking to, what's interesting about it. And then maybe a month in, you're thinking about alternative places to send them, like a listicle or some sort of advertorial where you're diversifying the places that you're sending them to experiment with that as well. So that's like what I would say in terms of a brand new, you're trying to basically learn and as much as you can over a certain period of time. The thing that's also important is if you have like $10,000 to $15,000 is you may be better off spending that over a 2-week period versus spending it over a month, right? Because many times you'll learn faster by spending more than you will doing a smaller budget over a longer period of time. And yeah, in an ideal world too, you have some sort of resource that you're able to ask, does this look normal? What does this do? A big part of it today as well is being sure that you're informed on all of the automatic enhancements Meta's turning on, which is constant and sort of now always what they're up to. So I'm not saying you have to turn them all off, but I think you need to be aware of those. So I think if you're brand new as well, you want to try to educate yourself around what are things Meta's going to turn on automatically and how do I shut those off, or some of those off maybe, so that, things aren't showing up in Chinese or something. Like, I don't know. You see a lot of weird stuff. So just being aware of that. And before you spend $10,000 to $15,000, I think it's like making sure you have some sort of a guide. And that can be a lot of different things. I mean, that could be, we have many people that use our Foxwell GPT, which is like our custom built GPT, and they just use that and ask questions to it. They don't want to be in the community, but they want to have a guide. So I think you got to have that, because otherwise it's like, you're going to worry. I would worry that you're, going to be spending blindly. Like, it's complicated enough.
Can you, if you stop, let's say you just, you run that and you stop the ads from running after you've hit that budget, how long does it typically take now for the ads to relearn? Like if you stop campaigns, let's say you're a brand and you're not seeing the results, or you're going into some seasonality shift, is it ever recommended that you stop all your ad campaigns? Should you always be keeping something running?
I mean, I wouldn't, I think it's a function of if you need to stop, certainly. I mean, I think it's a function of like what your overall, numbers are that you need to be getting towards. And if there's no other engine that you're running, then you need to, when you're building forecasts and stuff, make sure that it's a realistic based on what you're trying to get to. Like, if you're going to spend $10,000 to $15,000, like, you might be only making $10,000 to $15,000 that you can attribute from meta ads, and it might just be a break even game. So I think if you're okay with that, then the expectation is set. Yes, this is all right. And is it okay to turn them off and kind of readjust while I'm learning? I think you could certainly turn them off, but I think you would also want to be careful to turn them. You might just want to turn them down as you're learning versus completely off, because I do think that the function of getting people in and new traffic consistently is an important one. But again, it's all about your financial. I mean, if you turn off the spigot and you're like, this is okay, I'm all right with this, and I have enough to cover my monthly expenses as I continue to learn on this, then that's okay. A lot of people, sometimes that's common in like an Amazon brand. They'll come in, they've had success on Amazon, and they come in on Meta and they want to experiment, and they're doing some turning on and turning off. And I think that's okay. You can certainly look at that. I just think you have to make sure that when you're doing that, you have the expectation and goals set previously, so that you're not just establishing them on the fly of like, this is what I think it'll do. This is, like, generally we think it does. If we spend $1, we're going to make $1.50. That's kind of what we're hoping for. And, this is like in talking to experts and getting it from them is what you can expect. I mean, I still don't think there's any more powerful engine on cold traffic than Meta in the world, and in the Western world, let's say. Like, I mean, you can talk about YouTube, you can talk about display and da 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 da. You can talk about all this other stuff, but the quality is no one's close. And so, it's worth the investment to figure that out.
Let's talk about how brands approach like an agency, right? So if you think about AI and how brands are thinking about AI and the future of media buying, how much do you think a brand will need an agency for the ad buyer's job before that gets automated in, 2 to 3 years? How relevant does the ad buyer stay?
I think it's very much a function of what the owner of the company wants to do. and how much capacity they have to be able to do that. So, I think you can't ever underestimate time constraints in today's world that people have on themselves. So, like, an example is like, I could build a fence, okay, in my house here. Like I have this bamboo plant I want to get rid of. It's terrible. I was like growing crazy. I hated it. So I cut it all down and I was like, I could build this fence, but I don't have the time to build the fence. So I'm just going to like hire this guy to build this fence. And it was a premium I paid to do that. And they did a great job. And that, I think that's exactly the same functionality of this. It's like, there's brand owners that have a lot of, there's constraints on you. You're ordering inventory, you're running staff, there's tons of stuff that you're doing. You're innovating on products. And if you're a marketing led founder and you feel like you can do this, then great, and you have the time to do it, then great. But like the reality of this today is you need a lot of time to dedicate to how quickly the stuff is changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that there's ever going to be the death of an agency because like of the person doing the ads, because people have just a lot of stuff going on. Now, could someone, or will there be a lot more insourcing? Sure, there could be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that agencies are going to go away overnight, because I think the expertise and the knowledge that you have from looking at more than one account is a valuable asset. And if you hire that out, that even if you're paying $5,000 a month for this and you're spending $50,000 a month or whatever, it's like, that's worth it, because it's just like a financial advisor. Like you could go in and use Polymarket stuff to like invest your own money in Schwab, but like, why would you, if these experts who look at all this, they look at market data all the time. So it's like, it's worth the money to do it. I think that pricing will continue to evolve in that marketplace, but I don't know that the ad buyer's job is going to go away. I mean, the ad buyer itself has already shifted. It's gone from, pulling a lot of levers to being really a creative strategist to a degree that you have to be. I just was messaging with folks at Motion, and they're doing this creative strategy webinar where they're like, it's a course, they're training people to do this. And they like have a month left and they have 36,000 registrants. It's like, everybody wants to do this, because everybody knows they need it.
Yeah.
So that's I think if you own an agency, I wouldn't be too threatened by that. I think the complexity of the industry and the speed of which it's changing is a value proposition for your services.
Yeah. And to that point, it's, let's say you're a brand and you've been working with an agency. How long should a brand give an agency before pulling the plug? What are the signals that like tell a brand it's time, or to try something new and try something different?
Yeah. So I think that a lot of it is when you bring in an agency, one of the core functions of that agency, I think, is to do two things. One is to save you time and to make your processes, just to save you time and free up your time to be able to work on product innovation, whatever, other things in the business. Okay. So that's one. So it's like, if you feel that they are taking more time, that you've hired them, used to spend 10 hours a week on marketing or 15 hours a week or whatever the number is, and now you're spending 20, it's like, that doesn't make sense. Like, they should make your life easier. So that's one. I think that another one is a core function of bringing on an agency is bringing in new customers, like to scale your business. That's what they're supposed to do. And there's plenty of agencies that I've seen that just go in and do a lot of stuff with remarketing and all this to make the numbers look good, but they're not actually growing the business. That's what they should be doing that. So if you aren't seeing, so if you're not tracking but you want to start to track net new customers or whatever, then that's something you need to start doing. You need to start tracking net new customers, net new people that are coming in, net new sessions, etc. Things like rolling reach, where you're understanding what's the percentage of new people that I'm getting in front of. That's something that they should be doing. And if they are not doing that and you're not seeing that, then that's a problem. And that's a time for you to be like, this isn't the right fit. Another thing is, if an agency is giving you a brick wall every time you bring them an idea, that's another big sign. Like, an agency should be able to tell you honestly, this is a good idea, this is a bad idea, but also say, like, they can't say no to everything. Because you're like, what about this? I read about this, or I heard about this. Yeah, you know what? Like, let's give that a shot. Here's how I would change that to, put it in the processes that we're doing. Here, I wouldn't shift it in this other way. Like, they can say no, or they can integrate ideas. Like, they want to be collaborative. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, you don't want to just be like a yes man agency who just does exactly kind of.
No.
what they're telling you to do, which kind of goes back
No,
to your point. They should be making your life easier. They should be bringing new ideas and
absolutely.
collaborative.
Well, yeah, it's they're a strategic partner. Like,
Hmm.
and if you don't feel that you can honestly speak to your agency about, hey, I'm a little nervous about this, a little nervous about this, like, they should hear that, and they should be willing to hear that and then be able to adjust. And not a lot of it, that's more rare, but that's how it's a signal of a good relationship.
What are the tools? You had mentioned that you have a custom GPT that you created for Foxwell that a lot of your users dive into. How often does that get updated? How do you think about that tool? How do you think about like the future of where this is going and like making sure that you're constantly innovating on that tool to make sure that it's giving accurate data?
Yeah, so the custom GPT just was a function of wanting to always roll out new features for Foxwell founder members. So, I'm always trying to value stack new stuff all the time. Like last month, we gave you guys a new reporting tool that I'd been working on with a member, and like everybody got access to that immediately. And, this is going to be a paid product eventually, but like for members, it'll always be free. Right. So that's how the GPT came about. The GPT came about that so many of us were getting into a GPT style discussion with things. And we have the Foxwell bot, which pulls Slack threads contextually that you can
Mm.
ask in Slack, hey, I'm trying to look at something on cost caps or scaling or whatever, and it'll pull and source that information. But we also have the GPT, which I felt like there was an opportunity to build because we have a massive SOP database that has hundreds of SOPs in it, constantly. There's tons of them that we're updating on a weekly basis. And then we have all these call transcripts. And so I felt like there was a place to put all of this stuff. And so we update the GPT weekly with honestly, sometimes it's like 50 pages of documents that we're uploading in it and training it and having it talk like me, basically. And so that's a tool that members have access to for $0, and then some people just have that on their own. But the future of this is, I think, a lot of what we're information's being quickly distilled to us, and so I think tools that are built like that help take all this big suite of information you have and say, I don't know, what do I do with this to complement human interaction is, I think, where that's the magic of it, because you don't want to completely be dependent on the AI telling you like, well, this is what it says in these SOP documents. You also want to get like a person's opinion. Like I did this last week, and this is what I saw. I think between those two things, that's how you get the best results in your campaigns right now.
What do you think about AI for the creative? I know you mentioned like testing that 10-15% of your budget should maybe go towards AI creative. How does that kind of evolve as a tool and you're thinking of how your members are using AI right now?
Yeah, I think everybody's using AI a little bit differently. Everybody's kind of figuring out and catching up where they want to go. I think it's important to mention, like, first, you have to be experimenting with this stuff on a regular basis. So this is what it looks like to be successful, is like experimenting and messing around and having a person in your organization or yourself or persons that are constantly experimenting and just like have the edict to mess around and try these things out. And look at the processes that take a lot of time and say, like, what can we do if we automated this? That's part of it.
Mhm.
I think that as it relates to creative, specifically creative, and innovating on that, it's continues to become better every day, like what you're able to do. Talking about pulling in reviews, talking about personas, all this kind of stuff. I think at a minimum, you want to be trying to work towards workflow where you're constantly, if you're an agency, where you're constantly considering, or you're in-house at a company, what the consumer is saying about your brand and what the objections are and what they like or what they don't like or what the angles are or what features really make your products stand out, and your messaging around that and creating new ads that are talking about that and messing with that on a regular basis. So there's a system that is enabled by AI that, and this could be with Claude, this could be with Perplexity, this could be with a combination of tools. But if you go to Scalability School podcast, we did an interview with Will Sartorius about this, and Will walks through the process of, I mean, this is now old. It was like a month ago, but he walks through his process of how he creates AI creative. And it's basically, you're taking reviews, you're taking what people are talking about it, you're putting it in here, say, look at this. And then I'm trying to create an ad that has featuring a hunter that does this. Okay. And it's like, boom, boom, boom. And it gives you this ad. So that kind of workflow that you're thinking about I think from a creative standpoint, you need to be establishing that or be curious about that, because your function as an agency within the Meta ads world, if this is the work that you do, or your function as an advertiser in the Meta ads world, is to constantly be innovating on this. So having a system that's enabled by AI to try this is important. And it doesn't have to be everything that you're doing. I mean, hopefully you have other creative partners or you have a creative content team that's working on this, but it needs to be a portion of what you're doing, because it's going to become infinitely more important to make sure you understand this as time continues. Like we're on a real roller coaster here.
It's cool. It's exciting. It's
crazy.
super
Yeah.
exciting. It's fun. I think it's like you're saying, it's like you recorded a video a month ago. That process may have changed by now.
Yeah, I'm sure it has.
Thinking about when is it right for a brand to launch like TikTok ads?
TikTok is an interesting one. I think that if you have a product that is easy to communicate and quick, and it's a lower value dollar product, and I think speaks to a Gen Z audience, particularly a Gen Z female audience, a makeup, a cheaper handbag, or you know what I mean? Like, I think that has legs. The issue that I've always had with TikTok cohorts is, this was 2 years ago. I remember Cody Plofker put out a tweet that was saying basically the TikTok cohorts were lower quality users. And this is when TikTok was hot. It was taking 30% of everybody's budget. And, I think that's still the case to a degree. I think that they're a lower quality user. They're not going to stick around as long. But I think if you have a brand that leans into that Gen Z world, I think you're better off giving it a shot. And if you already have a content game that is punchy and you have someone that can iterate the speed that is needed, I think it can be a profitable place for you.
What about AppLovin? Is AppLovin still a thing?
Yeah, AppLovin is the channel that I've seen and heard, but like physically seen, drive the most incremental results in 25 outside of Meta. And I'm not saying it's huge. It's not like, massive percentage of budgets are shifting over there. But if I've seen it drive, when in partnership with Meta, it seems to drive the most incremental results. And there's people there. And I think it's because it's a function of everyone. First of all, they're 100% non-skippable for the most part. So that's good. And I think it's a function of everyone on their phone all the time and nobody actually looking around. So they're like waiting for their tires to get changed and they're playing Candy Crush. And like, there's the ad. So like that, it's meeting people in those micro moments where they're in between things and they're playing a game when they're bored somewhere, and they see it and go from there. So I do think it's incremental, and it's the first channel in a long time that I've seen that's done work to push that forward, which is great. But just like anything, you want to go slow.
Does it work for premium brands?
Certainly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It works more. A larger selection of people than I ever thought it would work for. I've seen it on furniture. I've seen it on cookware. I've seen it on, I've seen it on socks, like Zach's. I've seen it on his stuff. Like, it's good. It's not, again, it's not like if the Meta budget's $100,000 a month, it's not like it's, $50,000. In some times in Q4, it was getting close for some people, but it's 10% of budgets, 15% of budgets. Yeah.
What's the last great novel you read, Andrew?
Man, so it's funny. I only read business books until 5 years ago, like business motivational stuff. And then I started reading nonfiction. And so that was a journey, and I got really into nonfiction, and for some reason got really into reading about shipwrecks and like sea journeys in like the 1700s. And then recently a very good friend of mine gave me some some fiction. And I've never read any fiction, honestly, at all. And I read this fiction book, in my adult life, that was a sci-fi, because he's a big sci-fi guy. And I read Ender's Game, and man, it was awesome. I was like, I couldn't put this thing down. It was like all about like galaxies and child warriors. It was nuts. So that was a good one. That was the most recent that I read, which I love. Big hit.
If you're looking for a nonfiction book about seafaring activities, there's a great book called The Last Pirate of New York. It takes place in the 19th century. It's by this great author named Rich Cohen, who also wrote a great book called The Fish That Ate the Whale, which is about the guy who basically started the banana trade in America and was like the first kind of like agricultural
This is up
American.
my alley. Yeah, I had a guy that I met at a Thanksgiving party here in Santa Barbara who I told this to. We were talking about books, and he wrote a book that was his memoir about sailing the ship that was in Master and Commander from Providence, Rhode Island to San Diego to be used in the film.
Oh, wow.
And they sailed this 17th century schooner or 18th century schooner, right? Or whatever, like to San Diego. And he wrote about it. But he had this book that he recommended to me that was basically, I can't remember, but it was about these guys who got marooned in the Falkland Islands. They got completely forgotten about for years, 3 years, 4 years, or whatever. And what they did to survive. And, there was prostitutes in the book. It had everything. It had prostitutes. It had people getting, drunk. There was like people killing each other. It was crazy. I was like, yeah, I can't remember the name of that book, but that was the one I read right before. And it's a true story because they journaled every day. This group
That's
of men.
insane.
This is all true, just straight from their journals. It's like, what? It's like day 485. Like, the whales came early today, and I don't know. It's just, to me, I find it so fascinating. I think the speed of technological innovation is insane. I have this photo of my grandma as a child, as a baby in Oklahoma in the Dust Bowl in a house made of sod. That was my grandmother. She was born in the teens, and it's like that's just insane to me. So I read about this stuff and I can't believe that I can like DoorDash medicine to my door in 5 minutes. Like it's absurd. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of stuff fascinating.
Well, dude, thanks for so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Obviously, people can find you just by Googling Foxwell. Where else is
Foxwellfounders.com is the community. We also have a community for creators called Hive House UGC, which is specifically like building creators up. We also have a whole bunch of other stuff on our blog. I'd check it out, foxwelldigital.com/blog, and then our podcast, scalabilityschool.com. I'd love to have you check that out. If you're a brand owner, 7 or 8 figure brand owner, that's a really good podcast for you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.